Okay. There's a sign-up sheet that Christine is bringing back over to the podium area. If anyone else wants to sign up and hasn't already, now is a good time to do that. All right, the time being 9:01 a.m. on April 20th, 2023, I'd like to call to order this meeting of Kane County's Public Service Committee. Clerk, please call the roll for attendance.
Gums,
Gums here.
Lewis,
Lewis here.
Surgeons,
Burgess present.
Tepe,
Epi here.
Williams,
Williams here.
Young,
Young here.
Sanchez.
Present.
You have quorum.
Okay. We could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was thinking of you earlier this morning.
Okay, if someone could please ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of March 23rd, 2023.
Deputy so requests.
Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Public comment. I know we have one or two people signed up for public comments today, so we'll do those now. I imagine most are on agenda items. If they're not, you get 3 minutes. If it's something separate to the election night, otherwise you get 5 minutes. So I will start calling the names that I have. There. Mr. Michael McMahon. And I know you've been here and some others have been here before. That microphone is not very sensitive, so you do have to make sure you adjust it so it's right in front of your mouth.
I think they fixed that.
Did they?
It looks like a new one.
Yeah, hopefully.
I wonder why.
Okay. So right now, you may trust, stand.
I was wrong.
Hello? Hello?
Neither is on.
1, 2. Oh, okay, that works now. Okay,
Yeah, they get it.
Yeah. change it.
so in the presidential election, for the first time ever, partisan groups were allowed on a widespread basis across that red line separating government officials who administer elections from potential operatives who work to win them. Time magazine went on with a story on how the election was well funded by a bunch of private money. COVID was kind of used as cover during this election. The intent was to have more mail-in ballots. During the 2020 election, half the voters ended up voting by mail. The other quarter voted early. Zuckerbucks. What are Zuckerbucks? They're funded through the Center for Technology and Civic Life. If we look at the memorandum to Mr. Cunningham from Duggan, it says the reason is the U.S. Alliance, Center for Technology and Civil Life. Right away, we're getting Zuckerbucks going into the treasurer's office here. The CTC or the CTCL disperses large grants to election officials and local governments across the country. I would assume that $2 million is kind of a large grant. So they got the model here. In Wisconsin, Wisconsin law says that voting via absentee ballot must be done carefully to prevent potential fraud or abuse. Okay. Elections are to be run by the clerks or other government officials. 5 cities in Wisconsin did not do this. They chose to take what we call the Zuckerbucks here. Some government officials were willing to do almost anything. There was high school workers involved. They brought in, it's a whole array of items. However, a few weeks after the 5 Wisconsin cities received these grants, the CDCL emailed the executive director of the Milwaukee Election Commission to offer an experienced election staffer that could potentially embed with your staff in Milwaukee in a couple of days, end quote. This out-of-state staffer, he was named Michael Spitzer Rubenstein. So Ruby over here would eventually take over much of Green Bay's election, planning from the election charged with running the election. The election official was called Chris Tasky, who ended up resigning over the whole issue. Amazingly, Ruby asked for direct access to the Milwaukee Election Commissioner's voter database. I'm definitely not comfortable with his quote on that, so on and so forth. Basically over here, and I've got a number of other people who are involved in Brown County. Sandy Juno says the same thing. But the plan over here is for strategists to bring in activist groups into election offices. Could never have been imagined before, which is what they did. And they took over these elections so easily. If it could happen in Wisconsin, sweet little old Green Bay, Wisconsin, these people can coordinate any place. So I'm going to bring you back to the memo. I got one more thing here. So these officials were required within the contracts to work with partner organizations to massively expand mail-in ballot. Now, I don't know what the goal is here in the money that Cunningham is taking, Don Cunningham, clerk, okay, the clerk is taking. But in the memorandum from John Dugan over here, it says that we can't say for sure why the Kane County was selected for this part. Hello, I mean, think about, if you look at the history of what happened in 2020 elections, that's what's going on here too. It's kind of obvious. They put it right in front of your face. The goal here is the upward trend of mail-in ballots. This is according to your memo, of course. So I'm going to ask people in the committee here, or anybody for that matter, when you pay your bills, whether it's electric bill or whatever, do they not say on that bill, do not send cash in the mail? Right? So basically over here, mail-in ballots, not much different than cash. Would anybody in this office say, let's take $5,000 of cash, put it in an envelope, mail it to yourself? Would that be a wise idea? I think not.
Sir, if you could conclude
what's that?
If you could conclude your comments, please.
Well, I'm trying to. Give me enough time. So what's your plan with this money? That's what I'm going to ask. Is Cunningham here? I thought he was supposed to be here today. So we don't know the plan, right? But anyway, as the board members, you oversee the budget, correct? Am I correct in that assumption? So you don't have to approve everything he asks for. I submit to you that possibly you should, say, okay, if you're going to take this money, we're going to cut your budget by $3 million. Okay, so I think you have the power to do that, but you can think of something creative for sure. That's about all I got time for, apparently. Okay.
Excuse me. I thought most speakers would be referring to the election. So if you do need a little more time to speak about the U.S. Alliance issue, I will allow that. I don't want you to feel stifled. I assumed more interest was on the elections and the agenda item. So apologize for that misunderstanding. I'm going to call the next speaker, Ms. Debbie Kantorowski.
I too would like to ask, where is the clerk? Madam Chair had asked that he be in attendance last meeting, and he's not here. During the last few board meetings, we have stated that the elections in the past cycles have been far from excellent here in Kane County. Several of us have publicly questioned the results of the past consolidated election to several of the elected officials in this room. And yet, with zero explanation addressing our concerns, the election results were quickly certified by the clerk on April 18th. Again, I ask, how can a Geneva School Board candidate have 1,278 votes on election night and then certify at 1,024 on April 18th. It is not possible to lose votes. Each of you as elected officials should be concerned about this issue, especially if you're planning on running again. Since this does not exemplify an excellent office, what truly is the purpose of the Center for Tech and Civic Life, also known as the CTCL, to award Kane County the U.S. Alliance for Excellence Elections with $2 million. The goal of the CTCL is to join 6,000 clerks' offices together around the United States to centralize how elections occur. This is an agenda that has been created by the CTCL by using the Alliance and its network of partners like the Election Group to infiltrate our elections. According to the agreement from the CTCL that the clerk has signed, the money is to be used in 3 ways. 1 is the equipment component, 2 is the technology component, and 3 is the human component. How does an outside organization have the authority to come in and tell our elected officials and staff the equipment they need to purchase, the technology they need to use, and the personnel that they should be hiring to staff the office? Furthermore, the agreement also specifies by January 31st, 2025, it's extended an awful long time, the clerk's office must provide a report back to the CTCL that the clerk's office has compiled with the terms and conditions of the grant agreement. The agreement clearly states that the CTCL may discontinue, modify, or withhold part of or ask for the return of part of the grant funds if it so determines. What happens if the clerk has not met all of these arrangements within the agreement and has spent all the money? Does Kane County have to pay the refund? Ottawa, Michigan was a county that turned down the award because of transparency. The clerk realized that this award would not provide the transparency that should be required of a clerk's office. Transparency is certainly an issue here in Kane County. Without a FOIA, Kane County residents have no idea of the contents of this award and what is required of the clerk. Elections in the United States should be run by laws and not shaped by either Democrat or Republican parties. We are asking for a fair, transparent, accurate elections from the Kane County Clerk's office. We are asking that the board deny the clerk the ability to partner with the Alliance and require that he give back the money. I hope that you will consider doing a resolution to bar any outside funds from entities such as this. Thank you.
Okay, Joseph Bauer. Is Joseph Bauer here? And apparently there's a new microphone, so you don't have to get right on it anymore. You can be a little more comfortable with it. Just learned that this morning.
Thanks for that. I was going to suggest that the first thing you do with the Alliance money is buy a new microphone.
They got ahead of you, man. They got ahead of you.
So again, good morning. My name is Joe Bauer. I've been a Kane County resident for over 36 years. This morning, I would like to also address the board regarding the $2 million U.S. Alliance grant to the county clerk's office. And already many concerns have been expressed regarding the grant. However, rather than further debate the merits of the grant, I'd like to focus on the county board's review process and oversight responsibilities related to the grant. Based on the controversy surrounding the grant, the appearance of impropriety has already been well established, and this again is due to the grant's association with the Center for Tech and Civic Life that has clear ties to funds provided by big tech billionaires. One would think that the county clerk would welcome a review by the board because of these concerns. However, that's not what happened. In fact, there appears to be an effort to prevent the board review and approval. Let's review a few facts to frame the issue. In December of 22, the U.S. Alliance awarded a $2 million grant to Kane County, not the clerk. $650,000 was distributed in December of 22, and the remaining $1.35 million is to be distributed in December of 23. The first check was made out directly to the county clerk. However, the grant agreement specified Kane County as a grantee, and therefore, currently, to my understanding, the grant funds are contractually under the purview of the county board. Since then, the county clerk office has engaged the state's attorney's office to revise the grant agreement to maintain the grant solely under the clerk's internal controls. Now, there is a number of very troubling questions here. Who reviewed and approved the initial acceptance of this grant? Were board members or anyone other than the clerk's office involved? Did the board concur with the county clerk's action to engage the state's attorney to revise the grant agreement? Did the board vote on it? Has the board even reviewed the revision? The Kane County Code states the following regarding the board conduct of meetings. And I quote, "When a question is put, every member shall vote thereon. Surely transferring a $2 million line item from the board to the clerk's office would merit a formal vote. Therefore, it would appear to me that relinquishing $2 million to the clerk's office without a vote would be in violation of the Kane County Code. Let's also review the responsibilities of the county board's public service committee, this committee, and the clerk's office. The Kane County Code states the following: this committee shall have jurisdiction of all matters related to the offices of the county clerk, recorder, and other offices. This includes, but is not limited to, the approval of the purchase of supplies and equipment for said offices where the same is not in conflict with statutory requirements. In other words, the Public Service Committee has oversight responsibility for the clerk's office. The clerk's office responsibilities are addressed in the Illinois compiled statutes, which says the county clerk shall have the right to control the internal operations of the clerk's office and to procure necessary equipment, materials, and services to perform the duties of the clerk's office. Now, I do not see a conflict between those two responsibility statements, and therefore, the oversight responsibility of the Public Service Committee is not superseded by a statutory requirement in the clerk's responsibility statement. It would appear obvious that one of the primary intended consequences of revising the language in the Alliance grant is to absolve or even prevent the Public Service Committee from exercising its oversight function of the clerk's office based on a carefully worded revision of the grant and the legalistic interpretation of a nuance in the Illinois statutes. Further, if the grant money is allowed to be spent solely on the discretion in the clerk's office, are these expenditures also exempt from the dollar amount restrictions and approval protocols detailed in the code regarding purchases, bids, and requests for proposals? Ask yourself, does the Alliance grant demand a thorough review and subsequent approval or disapproval by the full board or the Public Service Committee? Without an in-depth review, are you putting the board at risk of blindly accepting funds that may turn out to be detrimental to Kane County? Should you be skeptical? Consider this. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, 23 states, 23, prohibit, limit, or regulate the use of private and philanthropic funding to help fund elections. These limitations were implemented with just cause due to bad experiences and show a healthy skepticism regarding private money, and Kane County should do the same. So in closing, I respectfully request that the county board execute their oversight function as specified in the code, perform an in-depth review of this grant, and if, that is, if you decide to retain the funds, do not allow these funds to be solely controlled by the clerk's office, because no oversight means no accountability. Thank you for your time.
From Mr. Terry Bauer. Terry Bauer here.
Miss J, miss.
Apologize.
Good morning. Americans value freedom of speech, Some perhaps value the First Amendment even more than their own life. Our vote is a part of that freedom of speech, that First Amendment. If our vote cannot be secure, then we have lost not just our vote, but also our voice, because our vote is our voice. In November of 2020, millions of voters saw suitcases of ballots being pulled from under tables in Georgia after poll workers were told to leave the polls at 10 p.m. because of a water pipe leak, later proven to be fake. 3 years later, in November of 2023, voters experienced shortages in Arizona on Election Day when they knew a majority of Republican voters showed up to vote and found that they could not vote because their polling places ran out of ink and paper. Many of those people simply went home in frustration. Across the United States, millions of voters have lost trust in our election authorities and their ability to administer elections properly. On the night of Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, in Kane County, Illinois, the website showing the total votes for the consolidated election went down at around 9:30 p.m. and did not come back online for at least an hour or two. The explanations that were given, oh, it was the storm, the one that lasted 10 minutes and was over by 4 p.m. Then the reason was the USB drive that was mistakenly called a USB file. That was the problem. It was also said that so many people were using the server that it crashed. Well, this was a consolidated election with less voters than any other election, and overloading the server would cause slow responses, but not crashes. Was an algorithm to blame? If a computer causes a 30% reduction for some candidates and absolutely no reduction for other candidates, then could someone have changed the algorithm that was target specific? Who would have done that? Who would have approved that and why? Can we trust the machines without an explanation of why they were changed? How can any of that data be trusted afterward? Computers only do what people tell them to do, period. Operator error was another possible cause. Yet another reason for the problem was a dirty file with corrupt data on it. Any file considered corrupt means that no part of the data can be trusted. In all, a total of 6 reasons were given for what the Daily Herald described as a glitch. Which of those 6 reasons are we supposed to believe? Election results are always, always, always about trust. Trust in the election process is something that can be ruined or eroded in a single election, as it was for millions of voters, millions, in November of 2020, when over 147 House members and at least 14 senators vowed to stand and object to the electors and demand an investigation after the 2020 election. Is trust now continuing to erode with the anomalies of the voting totals of the consolidated election here in Kane County from April 4th? If we think this is a partisan issue, then we minimize the importance of all of this. All political parties should be concerned about the erosion of trust that is happening in our electoral system. All parties should be concerned, and all voters. How do we begin to restore the trust that Americans once had in our election process? It will begin to be restored when investigations are allowed to proceed, providing transparent inquiry into the process, the people, and the machines. It will begin to be restored when election workers are treated with respect and are shown that they are valued and needed for that transparency, rather than being threatened with a felony or with violence, as some of us personally experienced. Trust will finally be restored when we once again vote using paper ballots on election day with limited absentee votes in small local precincts, with bipartisan hand counting, and with total transparency. Thank you very much for your comments, for your time today.
Rumiana McMahon. Assuming I'm saying that correctly.
Good morning to all. I just have a question. We talk about all this, numbers. Okay.
Maybe it's
okay.
not as strong as we thought.
Maybe my voice. I have a question. So my question is, we talk about all those issues, numbers, things happening, and I haven't heard any feedback. That's all. Anybody is comprehending? Anybody want to talk back to us? That's what we're here for. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
The answer, we don't typically respond in public comment. Public comment by procedure is a one-way conversation.
Give it up. Give it up.
A lot of good questions, a lot of good questions. Next speaker is Mr. Kenneth Lobel.
Good morning. Lots of familiar faces from yesterday. So what I want to address is my background is in the financial services primarily. I served as a whistleblower against one of the largest investment banks in the world. Served as a whistleblower against one of the largest banks in the world. JP Morgan Chase had a $100 million settlement with Illinois during the housing crisis. It went towards public pensions, teacher retirement service. So can money be used and abused? Yes, it's been done. It's been proven. COVID relief funds in the state of Illinois pay down the state debt, don't help the health services. Not 100%, but that perception is out there. There's no accountability. I also instruct at Judson University. I instruct in financial management, including nonprofit organizations. We study the Form 9500, my students would laugh there, which talks about the dispersion of funds. It also gives us indications of fraud. There's a framework that's used and recommended in financial institutions to prevent fraud. You can't prevent necessarily a criminal from being a criminal, and there's no need to suggest criminality, but there is best practices. Best practices do not allow somebody to control the disbursement of funds. And I believe it might be in the best interest in this particular issue, and I'm talking about this money that you received, okay? So I'll keep it short here, but make sure you got proper procedures and accountability, full transparency. And before accepting funds, did you do due diligence? And did you do due diligence on the companies behind this institution? Because we have seen in Illinois, we've seen fraud masked behind nonprofit organizations. We saw innocent people who wanted to contribute to the relief of people who were hurt in Haiti. How did that go with the Global Initiative Fund for Haiti? It didn't go too well, but the nonprofit was abused by the Clinton Foundation. I've been censored on every social media for exercising my constitutional right. We stood up today. I'd like to thank anybody here who served in the military. Thank you. I'd like to thank public service people, the police officers who were told to stand down when we had boards go up on our windows. Small businesses were run out of town. 33% of small business in the United States are out of business now because we followed a wokeism, because we let down our guard. I can tell you what it feels like to have your head above your skis and go down a slippery slope. I did it from the tallest peak in Breckenridge, and my ski fell off. Luckily, I had people who skied down and helped me up. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help you because a government locally, at the state level and federally, has slid down a very slippery slope. But it's not too late to stop. It's not too late to be held up. We're the citizens. We're the ones you represent, not the World Health Organization that's promoted on the video out here, which has nothing to do with the United States. We pledge allegiance to the flag, to the republic, one nation under God, indivisible. So we don't want to divide things. After having been censored and lost my freedom of speech on Facebook for making posts because I disagreed with COVID policy and I disagreed with certain policies of social culture and I wanted to express myself, and understanding that Facebook was funded by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, the R&D arm of the military. And there was one statement I'd like to correct. There was a statement made that algorithms are programmed. That may be true, but we're quickly entering a state when artificial intelligence and self-learning machines, ChatGPT and others, will actually have self-learning authority. So if we don't upfront make a commitment to stand up for the citizens, I believe in public-private partnerships as efficiency, but there's nobody in Iowa or any other state or any other election board that should have any influence over what happens in Kane County. These are Kane County citizens. We are Kane County taxpayers. You represent Kane County. So what I'm asking the board to do is to reject the funding, to have a mandatory due diligence process on the funders of the funding so that we can find out whether this is for legitimate purposes or to infiltrate our local governments as they have at state and federal level, in my opinion. Thanks for letting me speak.
We have Mark Avalar. I believe Mark is, oh, he's in person. I see him on Zoom.
Surprise. My name is Mark Avalar. I'm from Algonquin, Illinois, and I've lived in Kane County for over 28 and a half years. I'm here to speak on agenda items, so I believe it's number 6C. We live in the greatest country on earth. I think everyone here, in spite of differences, can still say that honestly. When peers of mine were able to testify on Capitol Hill yesterday to defend my chosen career of independent contracting, we can do same and more here at the local level. So I want to thank the board, Chairman Sanchez, this committee, and our countywide elected officials, Mosser, Mr. Lawson. I don't see anybody else. I know you're representing Mr. Cunningham's office, so I'll look forward to hearing your report later in this presentation. But my involvement on April 4th, which is the consolidated elections, I'll stay on topic. Through my freelance work, and I did as more of a volunteer this time, I was helping a friend compile election returns on election night, particularly crossing county lines, because I'm in Algonquin, so Algonquin's in both McHenry and Kane counties. There are also several local school board races that cross county lines, and you have to compile not one, but 2 election authorities, in one case 4. So here's what I saw, and I always have to remember the contextuality. I'm an old data guy from the 80s. You must always remember the context. And there was an architect who spoke during the regular meeting back earlier this month, And he mentioned something about architecture. Well, a key component of that is metadata and the contextuality of what the clerk's office, and not just here in Kane, but all 108 authorities across Illinois, the contextuality is unofficial returns. Unofficial. Now, we saw counts, instead of continuing to build, but up on election night, they went down. And when I was doing my final reports for my freelance work, I found I was updating a lot of numbers. I look forward to your report thoroughly later in this meeting to find out why that took place. But anybody who looks at returns on election night until the canvas is signed by our clerk and published, we have to always remember it's unofficial. That means it doesn't count until it's canvassed. And we recognize we all want to know as soon as possible. And with the advent of mail-in balloting, that might now go the way of the typewriter and the analog phone. But we want it to be right. We want it to be accurate over fast. That's my honest opinion. I heard some claims of fraud, and I always go back and speaking to grassroots groups across Kane as well as McHenry County is it fraud because it's really some evidence, or is it fraud because you don't like the results? I always ask people to ask that question of themselves first. For instance, up out where I live in Algonquin, District 158 saw a complete flipping of the school board. 4 seats went to a conservative slate of candidates. Now, 13% of my hometown is in District 158, and 2 of the new board members happen to be Algonquinites. There's been no claims of questionable fraud or anything. Turnout in Kane County, and this is a beauty of Kane County's unofficial counts, you get to see the turnout in each individual district during unofficial count time. Most times in other counties, you have to wait till the canvas to see what the true turnout is in D158, in D300, in D220. So we've seen a lot of newsprint about outside influences and political parties and unions, state, local, what have you there. But if there were a concerted effort backed up by questionable malfeasance, you wouldn't have seen some of the results you saw on April 4th. Let's look at other counties that I was also observing and elections. The city of Naperville, a center-right mayoral candidate won in spite of his main opponent being backed by members of Congress, including 2 in their hometown of Naperville. The city of Naperville is the 4th largest city. City of Joliet, an incumbent was also ousted by a center-right candidate for mayor. 3rd largest city in the state. 2 different election authorities counting those votes. Nobody's questioned it. Supermajority ousted the mayor of Joliet with a new mayor. So I respect, and I've been in the shoes of waiting for my own election returns when I was a candidate back in the 1990s. And yes, obviously I want to be on the winning side, but we always have to respect the will of the voters. And speaking of respecting the wills, I hope folks will respect mine, because I happen to have, I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera, but it says unofficial on the DuPage County webpage because they haven't canvassed the results there. So always remember, if the clerk's office needs to make that word unofficial on every page for election returns, I would suggest that's something you do. You do it on the paper returns, it says unofficial, but on the up until that canvas, make it very clear for all of us that it's unofficial returns. And while we want the accuracy, we know the official final count will be when the canvas is released. And also with the talk about who's monitoring elections, I do have a record. I volunteered to monitor Lake County in 2020 for the mail-in opening of the ballots, and with proper oversight. We can't control what happens in other parts of the country, but our local election authority, primarily our county clerk, is accountable to the voters. And our current clerk has been elected 6 times. And yes, there were some rough elections when the new E-slate equipment came in. Those of us who've been around long enough remember those days. But things improve. And let's remember maturity models and capability maturity models. You know, the Carnegie Mellon, continuous improvements, that highest level, that level 5. and let's continue to improve. So Mr. Clerk's representative, please take that to your office and hopefully that's going to be part of your update. But also I want to point out, seeing
Mr.
that
Avalar, if you could conclude, please.
Thank you. With the state's attorneys here, when the due diligence that I asked for last month on this grant application, please share it either in this meeting or in the appropriate setting. And remind us all what I said on Zoom last month. Do the due diligence, do it right, and make sure that everything is researched within the limits of the law. And if there's some additional input you're going to take, I trust your judgment on doing the right thing. So thank you very much. And thank you for allowing me to speak. God bless you all.
Next, I have Greg Wisemantle.
I'm not here for the election. I've got 3 minutes. I started because of the meeting of the climate change.
Sir, if you could pull the microphone just a little closer.
That it? That
That's
good?
better. Yes, very
Sorry.
good.
I came here a couple of weeks ago because of the climate change meeting. And I saw that and I recognized the young lady who's in charge of it, et cetera. It was a good turnout. I was a little disappointed in the consultant that you hired for 75 grand. And I asked how much it was, and that's what they told me. But I went back and I'm just a citizen. I'm not a Democrat, nor am I a Republican. So I went back and got with 2 other people, and we started to call ourselves the Citizens Action Commission. We are not affiliated with anybody. But as we looked at the Kane County website, some questions came up. And you see, I'm not talking about the election. But what we did see came up with 2 questions that I've got to bring back, because I suspect that those 3 people now will be 6. And then next week, they'll probably be 12. And the following week, they're going to be 24. And the following week, they're going to be 48. And the following week, there'll be 96. That's about as far as I can add. But the questions that they asked me to ask the board were important, because we looked at your website. We tore it apart. It's a good one. It's a good website. But we weren't looking at the technicality of the site. We were looking at the data on the site. And the data brought up a couple of questions. I looked at the site. It seems we have a lot of board members in the county. I'm going to say that again. It seems we have a lot of board members in the county. And that was the first thing that we all noticed. There's some 24 or 25, if you count the chair, I think, board members. And the next question that I didn't have, but somewhat one of my group of 3 did, what are the laws or rules that determine how many board members a county must have or can have? You probably can't give that to me now, but if you can tell me who I contact to find that out, that's what I'd like to have. And the third piece is, we noticed the 2020 salaries were there, but we didn't see any 2023. And based upon what we saw, the 2020 salaries for board members were $25,000 roughly. I don't know what they are in 2023. And I think the chairs was higher, but that's the point that we want to look at, is the Kane County Board. Do we have too many people? We just spent 75 grand on what we think is probably a flawed consulting bid, but that's all right. It's 75 grand, but that's 3 of your salaries from 2020. So that's what I'm here to ask. And if somebody can take my name, Greg Weissmantle, It's an old German name. And somehow get back to me, that would be just super. Because I've got some more people next week. They're going to attend. They're going to ask me probably the same questions. Thank you for your time.
Sir, if you email me, I can get you in touch with the proper information. The same goes for everyone. That's what we're here for. If you need something, just email us. Jared Sanchez. I don't know who your board member is. I can connect you to them though. Okay, next speaker, Mr. Chris Burkett.
All right. I was hoping to speak to Jack today. I just want to remind everybody how important having your vote count is. When you find out that your vote was never counted, it's a real sickening feeling. Like if somebody had violated you, somebody came and somebody stole something from you, it's really disheartening. I think we could do a whole lot better job. I'm thinking in the meantime, we might have to dial things back, do paper ballots, hand counting, plenty of oversight, especially with the money. I would never take $2 million. I understand that it's important for you guys because, I mean, $2 million is a lot of money, but it's going to have a lot of strings. You know, if there's as many strings as there are zeros, you got a bunch, you know, so, you know, I can go on for a long time, you know, about feeling violated. It's a horrible feeling, you know, and it's kind of, yeah, I don't even really know how to explain it. If you've been stolen from, if your house has ever been broken into, if your car's ever been broken into, you know the feeling. The life just gets sucked out of you. You don't want to eat. You just kind of want to throw up, you know, and you know, it's horrible. 5 of my votes. I've only voted 6 times. 5 of them have never been counted. Never. If that were to translate into the industry I'm in as a service technician, they would never be allowed to work on an air conditioner. We need to have a 99% service diagnostic rate, you know, which means, yeah, once a month we get to mess up a diagnosis. You know, and for 5 or 6, nobody would be qualified to work in my company because it's just a horrible job. It's you know, can't trust it. So I understand the need for technology. You know, I personally would love to see things move forward, you know, facial recognition. That would be awesome because I still have not gotten an explanation of why my votes weren't counted. It could have been the hand signatures, you know, maybe my signature didn't match. Nobody got back to me, you know, nobody, there's really no transparency. And I would love to see more of that. Yeah, and just do your due diligence, you know, like most everybody here has said, you know, put in some work, you know. There was some speakers yesterday at the health committee that were just talking about, you know, how a lot of their opinions or their opinions on the COVID reaction were correct. They were censored. And then the government came out, you know, a year later and said, oh, so we were wrong. You guys were right, which, you know, I'm not saying it's always the case, but, you know, the government's not always the greatest. You know, obviously we outnumber you guys. So just on from the aspect of brains against, you know, the problem to find a solution. I think we can do a better job, you know, and we would love to help you. We're on your side. We would love to see, you know, simple things like a website not going down, you know, that we can watch it in real time. You know, when I got involved in election integrity, one of the biggest things was as we were watching them come in, we were just sitting there thinking, yo, okay, WGN knows how many votes came in, NBC, all of them. Where are they finding out where these votes are coming in? How do we get a channel to the same place that they're watching all of these votes roll in. But instead, we just get, basically the after effects. There might be a couple of people with, privilege to access that in real time as it's coming in. But, I really think that, we could do a better job. And I applaud you guys for, standing up for us, the ones that do understand, that do listen to us. I want to see everybody's vote count, because that's basically, that's democracy, is everybody gets a vote. But when not everybody's getting a vote, that's just, you're silenced. I don't want to keep going too much longer, but yeah, I want to see a better job. Thank you.
Mr. Mike McMahon, I believe you spoke already. Did you just sign up twice? Is that what it was? Different topic. Okay.
I just wanted to thank you for showing some respect to the audience over here. It's a refreshing change not to be scolded like we were 3-year-olds here in the audience. But I do want to conclude that there was a great point made by one of the speakers here who said, we're here to help you. We're your voice. We're your tools. Okay. If you're going to be, a board that wants to it's going to make decisions that's good for the community, here's your voices. We're all your tools. That was a terrific point that was made. I hope you appreciate that. And we want to be here. We want to do some help. That's why we're here. So it's just my personal comments to the board. It's, like I say, it's a refreshing change to see some respect. Thank you.
Mr. Ken Zitko.
Hello. I'm Ken Zitko. I lived in St. Charles for 20 years, lived in Kane for 32. I have a prepared set of comments I want to make, but before I do, I'd like to address Mr. Avalar and the comments he just made. That architect who was here in the previous meeting was me. And I'm a very technical person. My job is very technical. I could stand up here and say a bunch of things that would confuse a lot of people, and I don't know what that would accomplish. So I am disappointed by the technical commentary about metadata and talking about things that may or may not be a factor, but talking in a way like most of us don't understand what's going on. We understand that we watched an election, we watched results roll in, we watched a simple website fall apart in front of us, and we've watched a half a dozen explanations be offered for something that shouldn't be that complicated. So I just wanted to speak to that idea and the fact that I was here in March and spoke, and then in the county board meeting, and then in this same meeting in March, you spoke about misinformation and disinformation. And then Ms. Gums spoke about the guy who said his votes were screwed up, which again was me, and suggested that I forgot what county I live in, but I didn't. I've lived in Kane County for 32 years, and everything I spoke about happened in Kane County, which I'm pretty sure was the way I started that presentation that time. So I just wanted to clear things up there a bit, and then I'll move on. And if there's more you'd like to discuss, I'd be happy to talk about this further. But like I just said, I've been here before talking about the consolidated election and the award. The election was just certified 2 days ago, and even though there were so many issues that I don't understand what the position of the county is at this point. If there's an expectation that the public trusts the results, that's a misguided expectation. So today I want to focus specifically on the failures of the Kane County Election Commission and their ability to follow the election code itself. I shared on Tuesday of this month that we worked with about, I forget how many poll watchers, maybe 50, a little more. And those poll watchers in this relatively small election. I understand it's complicated. There's a lot of different people to vote for, but it's still fewer votes than any other election. Collected about 100 incidents, and approximately 80 of those were direct failures to follow the election code. So like the excuses we've heard about the election itself, when we engaged with the director of elections, who I also thought was going to be here today, we got excuses. We started with explanations that basically just arguing about what the law was. Then we moved on to explanations that the election judges weren't trained to follow a specific law or another, which I'm not sure how that was an explanation at all. Then acknowledgement that what we were saying was accurate, but he couldn't be held responsible for what the people who are out there in the polling places are doing, that they actually follow it. So I don't know about all of you, but my boss is responsible for what I decide to do at work. So if I don't do what I'm supposed to, one of two things would happen. Either I'd be fired or he'd be fired. So it's also interesting that the poll watchers had several exchanges with technical judges where they were told they were committing a class 4 felony. We heard it mentioned earlier today already. We never learned what those violations were supposedly for, but that's not my point. My point is that disregarding the election code is actually a punishable offense, and that's defined in the code itself. So though the election is complete, the requirements outlined in the code continue. So one example, this is quoting from the code itself, sections 24A13 or 24B13, both describe that the vote tabulation and canvass, the computer operators that manage that must maintain a log and shall include the following information. One, alterations made to programs associated with the vote counting process. Two, if applicable, council messages related to the program and respective responses made by the operator. So for anybody who's less technical, that would be what the computer said when something went wrong, and then how it was responded to. Three, the start time for each precinct count, number of ballots counted for each precinct, any equipment problems, and insofar as practicable, the number of invalid security designations, and then 4, changes and repairs made to the equipment during vote tabulation and canvass. So at least some of the excuses we've heard for what happened during the election have to do with failures of the equipment. So all those things should be logged. This log is supposed to be available for public inspection in the Office of the Election Authority for 60 days after the proclamation of the results, which happened Tuesday. So that all of that information should be there right now for us to go take a look at. So, and it's worth pointing out, I guess, that the discretion exercised with respect to the code isn't about just polling places. There's also section 24A9 and 24B9 that talk about a public demonstration of the election equipment 5 days or more before the election day. There's supposed to be a public event held. It should be, 48 hours prior thereto by publication once in one or more newspapers. It's supposed to be shared with the State Board of Elections, and then representatives from political parties, the press, the Board of Elections, and the public are supposed to be welcome to come and attend this event. So I haven't been able to find anybody who has heard of this event or attended it. So we'll be FOIAing the documentation for the test, the notifications, and the results of that public test.
Sir, if you could conclude, you've exceeded 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to wrap up fast. This is a press release that was released by the clerk's office on November 28th, talking about how John Cunningham is proud to be selected for the alliance. And it ends in a paragraph that the first sentence, the clerk's office continues to strive to be the most transparent election authority in Illinois. So if that's true, how about if we demonstrate it? The code defines what's called a discovery recount. So instead of making us figure out if it applies and then asking for it, why don't we just voluntarily do it? I expect that the effort will reveal a lot more issues with the process and how it's executed. But I think it's something that we need to do. We need to figure out a way to restore trust. since 2020, many people have been up here talking about it. The public's trust in elections is declining, maybe the lowest ever. Our trust in the government is declining, maybe the lowest ever. So, there are counties across the country who have resolved how to do a paper ballot election, and they're happening. So I'd ask that you put that on the agenda and we begin talking about solutions for this problem. Thank you.
We have a Mr. Jim Whittington.
Good morning. I've been a resident of Kane County, voting resident since 1979. And, we hear a lot about the woke, who most of us think are asleep, and then there's the awake, okay? And I can assure you that for every person here, there's at least 1,000 other people that couldn't come this morning. And we're awake. And we're watching. We're watching every move that everyone's making, okay? And we aren't going to fall asleep again, okay? To give you an idea of grassroots citizen action, I was one of 26 riverfront homeowners in Kane County on Route 31 from Novak Park up to Silver Glen. And a former chairman of the Kane County Board, chairman of the Kane County Forest Preserve, decided one day he was going to condemn all of our riverfront property because he wanted to put a bike path there. But we weren't going to have that. We went in to see him. He says, I don't care what you do, what you say, I will own your property. And I was under the impression this is supposed to be a full board meeting. I'm surprised that the chairman is not here for this. How important. Oh, the chairman's here. Okay, excuse me. Pardon me, I didn't know that. Okay. But I'm really astounded that Jack Cunningham is not here. I thought that was the whole purpose for this, so he could face his, I don't know, accusers maybe. All right. Anyway, just to put a long story short about that, we formed a group called Stop Taking Our Property. Now, a lot of you may not remember that. It was 35 years ago. But we were the ones, we beat him, okay? And we got a referendum on the ballot and we changed the way the chairman was elected. Used to be you'd elect the board members and the board members would elect the chairman. We got rid of Phil Alstrom. We got it so that the citizens elect the county board chairman. And I'm telling you, you've woken up all these people here and we aren't going to take it anymore. There's a real popular saying, and unfortunately we're hearing too much of these days, and that's absolute power corrupts absolutely. And John Cunningham's been the Kane County clerk. I wasn't sure how long. I looked it up this morning. December of 2002. Okay, 21 years is way too long to serve in one political office. Okay. When people call for term limits, it's professional politicians that, like John Cunningham, that they have in mind. It's time for him to go. For him to not blink for 1 second and accept a $2 million grant award, accept it without any thinking, without talking to any of you. I mean, that's just smacks to me. I'm sorry. It smacks of political corruption. And he's been corrupted absolutely, and he needs to go. And I wish he was here because I could look him right in the eye and tell him that. I can go way back. I can name names like Otto Kerner and Dan Walker and George Ryan and Rod Blagojevich, Mike Madigan. He's just another one in the group. He's got to go. That's all I got to say.
Well, that is it for the names that I have. Is there anyone else that didn't get a chance to sign up? Ma'am, if you could approach the podium, please. Just state your name for the record. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Jane Beckelman. So I started out here, my life at the old Delnor Hospital. The first thing they did was put me on display in the baby viewing room. Anybody remember that? So I go way back. From there, I traveled down Route 25 to my home on the banks of the Fox River for 19 years. And then I moved around during my college years and ended up in South Elgin, which was ironic because as a kid, if you guys, any old St. Charles people here know that if you wanted to insult someone, you'd said, you belong in South Elgin. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a veiled reference to the Elgin Mental Health Institution. And so there's a testimony to the power of words and also a testimony to my love and concern for the Fox Valley and specifically King County. And frankly, now that one of both of our youngest turned 18, I do feel a lot more sane. So first of all, I'd like to join the others in asking, where is Jack Cunningham? If he said he was going to be here, if he can't follow up his promise to be here with action, that's very concerning. And in the 14 days since the April 14th King County election, the people of King County have heard or read at least a half a dozen different excuses as to why the servers stopped sharing public results on election night and came back online about 2 hours later, only to see thousands of votes missing in random and various races. This experience has left King County voters, both Democrat and Republican, asking many different questions regarding the dereliction of its management, ranging from campaigning, early and election day voting, through counting and posting of results. Questions like, who is Max Gordon? Is he a campaign organizer or a King County employee? Prior to Election Day, he was publicly involved in several candidates' races, showing up at several meet and greets, distributing walk cards, and openly promoting both Democrat and Republican candidates. However, on Election Day, several King County poll watchers reported running into him at the King County branch office and various other polling locations where he himself reported that he was a King County employee, or that he was hired by Jack Cunningham as an election inspector. Later on the election night, Max shared with several people he was at the King County building in Geneva collecting the adjusted results during and following the server shutdown. Does the Election Commission have the authority to invite anyone in on election day and night to participate? Question. Speaking of elections, as time passes, more and more people are asking about the status of the U.S. Alliance of Election Excellence, award or grant. At the March 14th board meeting, the state's attorney declared the contract recipient of the award agreement or contract was the county and not Jack Cunningham. However, in early December 2022, Jack Cunningham signed the contract and $650,000 in funds were distributed against the executed contract. If King County was the recipient and Jack executed the contract, was he legally able to enter the agreement and accept funds? This leaves people wondering, where does this leave the already distributed funds if there is no executed contract? Then on March 23rd, 2023, at the King County Committee meeting, we the people were told there were only two options the county was considering to resolve the legalities of the existing contract. However, neither option addressed the fact that Jack accepted the funds he was not legally the recipient of. In the corporate world, this is most likely would result in their being fired. We understand our elections are not single-handedly being run by Jack Cunningham. Jack has several staff members, both Democrat and Republican, nonpartisan employees and contractors, as well as mystery staff involved in supporting both previous as well as the recent April 4th elections. We can see from the many speakers on this subject related to vote count tallies changing mid-count, as well as several dozen watcher incidents shared over this entire election timeline, that Kane County elections are being managed well below par and are quite a departure from excellence. And this is potentially disenfranchising many voters. The above disaster should leave Jack and the county no other choice but to return the illegitimately distributed funds of $650,000, and Kane County and/or Jack Cunningham mutually and respectfully declining the invitation to become partners with the U.S. Alliance of Election Excellence without exception. I mean, everyone here knows there's no free lunch. And to suggest that we don't understand this is disingenuous, and we just don't buy it. I'd like to conclude my comments by making a declaration. So we declare that any partnership with principalities and rulers of darkness, or those cooperating with darkness, ends now. These entities are being removed from their thrones. We further declare that the sons and daughters of God are and have been rising up to take their rightful places in those seats of influence. We welcome Jesus Christ, the entire Godhead, and the host of heaven, and we enthusiastically partner with them to restore kingdom, peace, and order to our region. Thomas Jefferson said, "When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty." The sleeping giant is awakening. What we see has been happening. We see what has been happening, and we are not going to roll over and go back to sleep. Make no mistake, the day of reckoning is here. Liberty will be restored to this region and to our nation. Justice, liberty, and transparency will be restored. I thank you for your time and attention.
Good morning. My name is Tom Kozik. Today I'd like to just sort of go over a long held idea that is a part of the founding of the country called consent of the governed. So just briefly to review, this comes from the Declaration of Independence, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. This is sort of the thesis of the country. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, so this is pointing out that the reason for government is to secure the rights of the people. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So this is an argument that spans hundreds of years, probably most relevant to our founding is the argument consent of the governed versus divine right monarchy. There was a book that was published in the 1600s by Sir Robert Filmer. He was a proponent of divine right monarchy, and basically this is you're of the Adams bloodline. You rule absolutely with the authority of God. On the other hand, the consent of the governed, that theory is the power to rule comes from the consent of the governed. So Algernon Sidney and John Locke were critics of Filmer's book Patriarcha. Both were advocates for consent of the governed, limited government, and right to revolution. So this is part of our history, and this is part of our heritage. It is also your duty and your honor to uphold this. Our elections are the people's expression of the consent of the governed. Without it, we do not have a legitimate government. The duties of the election should remain with an elected person. They must have direct accountability to the people. I'm gravely concerned over money for influence from an entity that's associated with Zuckerberg, Gates, and the World Economic Forum. So just to sort of bring this back around to Illinois and our elections, I would like to read from the Illinois Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. This is the Illinois Bill of Rights. And I think it's noteworthy that this is Section 1, which may be the most important right. All men are by nature free and independent and have certain inherent and inalienable rights, among them which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights and the protection of property, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Wow, I wonder where they got that from. In closing, I would like to say, if the county moves forward with this, I suspect there will be consequences. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you. My name's Steve Briesowitz. I'm from St. Charles. And I'd like to talk about the election system a little bit. I went to the bank the other day, and as I watched the teller count out the money the first time, an extra 20 was accidentally put in the cash back. Now, tellers have a system to correct errors. They count the cash 3 times. And the teller counted it the second time, found the extra 20, put it back in the drawer where it belonged. It wasn't my 20. I was not cheated out of $20. It was the bank's 20. And the system checked for errors to ensure that the results were legitimate in that transaction. And our elections have error checking built into them too. I don't have any particular affinity with our clerk, but I do have faith in the voting system in Kane County. It's full of checks and balances, and the biggest check is all the people who run the elections. There's literally, I don't know the exact number, but probably hundreds of people that run every election. Claims have been made in this room about the legitimacy of Kane County elections, alleging fraud without any explanation how the fraud might have been accomplished or how it could possibly be that way. And the claims tend to fall into the category of, I didn't vote for that guy. Nobody I know voted for that guy, so he couldn't have won. There's no real explanation of how that happened. Like everywhere, we have an election with multiple checks to ensure accuracy. It takes hundreds of people to take our small corner of America to be run by the consent of the government, a small d democracy. From the moment you walk into a polling place, you're checked. They check your signature. They count how many people come in. The number of people coming in have to match the number of ballots cast. Anyone who's voted knows there's multiple people checking your name, checking your address, checking your signature, making sure you're eligible and qualified to vote, and you are who you say you are. And it's always one Republican and one Democrat at minimum, and there's always quite a few people in the room. If somebody had to try and cheat, you'd have to convince a lot of people to go along with that cheating with you. It just doesn't happen in a vacuum. When the voting day finishes, the hard disk that carries the votes put into a box, it's sealed, transported to the counting center, where the votes unsealed, the number of the box is checked. There's just a lot of checks and balances already built into the system. There are hundreds of people involved to run an election, and an outcome to be rigged, you would need the cooperation, corruption, and silence of dozens of people just to overturn a single precinct. And there's 103 precincts in Kane County. It's just an enormous number that would have to be corrupted to make that happen. Ben Franklin wrote that 3 may keep a secret if 2 are dead, insinuating that hundreds of citizens who are dedicating their time and efforts into keeping our voting systems running, not just in the clerk's office, but as people who are hired for the day, counting the votes, checking people in, running the election systems and everything else that's involved. To insinuate that they're corrupt is just totally absurd. I have faith in the Kane County election system. Thank you for your time.
Sir, approach.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My fellow citizens, my name is Anthony Catella. Today, I represent 2 constituencies, the constituencies of my fellow veterans and the people of the Precinct 18 of St. Charles, of which I'm proud to be a committee man. You know, I almost got to sit on the other side of this rail. I ran for county board last time around in 2022, and I also ran for a recent election. And I'm happy to have my name on the ballot in a free election. You know, a wise man once said that democracy is the worst form of government, except all the others that have been tried from time to time. Here in what was once a chapel, where learned divines prayed, so we today are in this chapel of our republic at the county level. And by our words and our actions and our presence, we are praying that our form of representative democracy, representative republic, will work. 105 years ago this month, Woodrow Wilson said the world must be made safe for democracy. I say today, our country at the county level, all the way, the precinct level, all the way to the presidency, must be made safe for democracy. And that's the prayer that rises from this civic chapel this morning. I will conclude now by saying I am proud to be a citizen who has been on the ballot and has voted for people on the ballot. And I trust our country can maintain that great civic tradition, because the free election is the only barricade between us and mob rule. And now as always, the flag and the Constitution of the United States has stood as a barrier between us and mob rule and dictatorship alike. I want the rule of the ballot, not the bullet, the cast of the ballot, not the mob. We have a choice. It's either mob rule or majority rule. I vote for majority rule. I vote in every election in person at the polling place on election day, one time in uniform. You know why? Because it's the soldier, not the politician, that guarantees us the right to vote. There's only 2 times I voted absentee. Once when I was in college, and once when I was overseas in the uniform of the United States Army, serving my country, asking not what my country can do for me, but what I can do for my country. And every day I wake up, I ask that question. And you'll see my name on the ballot again one day, maybe next election. May God bless this great country of ours here in Kane County, the state of Illinois, this great country of the United States. We're the exemplar to the world. Let's show that example in red, white, and blue. Thank you very much.
I'm Jody Zitko, and I've lived in Kane County for 20 years. I hadn't planned speaking today, so I have nothing formally prepared. But I did want to rebuttal some of the speakers today. The gentleman who spoke just a moment ago in the blue shirt, he didn't participate. He didn't support poll watchers. He's a citizen, so he's entitled to an opinion and a perception. But as you heard, there are people that have spoke over the last few weeks to share with you that there are actual incidents and reports and documentation related to how our elections are actually going. I will respond to one of the comments he made where people are actually doing the things necessary to confirm the voter is who they are and following the election code. That is not happening. It was consistently not happening, especially in early voting. They were not calling out names. The gentleman, actually my husband, Ken Zicko, spoke about the name calling or the conversation he had actually with the election director related to not calling the names out loud, not doing the addresses out loud. I think we might have had 20 or 30 poll watchers reporting that was happening over the course of those 14 days. I also had a conversation with the director of elections and asked him on election day how many election judges he had working the polls on election day, because it was very clear during early voting, there's a bandwidth issue related to managing our elections. You guys had about 4 election judges. Frequently, more often than not, it was 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. I know this is not a I want it to be nonpartisan, but it's a problem when you have 2 Democratic judges confirming signatures over and over again, documented over and over again. He said 750 election judges worked on election day. In a consolidated election in Kane County, there's about 34,000 votes or voters that show up for a consolidated election. If you do the math, that's roughly 50 ballots a judge on election day. I can assure you in a 12 or 14-hour day, I could probably hand count 50 ballots 100 or 200 times by hand. So, is it really necessary that we have all this technology? I mean, my whole career is built on technology, my whole life. But I can tell you that some things can be simply done by hand. We don't always need technology. And in this case, I'd say in the consolidated election, we could have counted those by hand easily. And so I'd like you to consider that as well as you guys move forward with what you do next. And we do hope you include us in that conversation. Thank you.
Thank all the speakers that came today. Been fun. I'm getting hungry, so if you don't mind, we'd like to move on to the county clerk's section of this agenda. So for that, we have a monthly report. Real quick, we have a resolution acknowledging the annual review of number of procurement cards issued to the county clerk and each of their transaction limits. This is just a housekeeping thing we have to do. I would ask for a motion in a second.
Gums will move.
Resolution. Gums moves.
Deputy seconds.
Deputy seconds. Any questions on this resolution? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Lewis. Miss Lewis. Surges. Pepe,
Deputy, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Young,
And yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
passes.
Okay, we will go to the clerk's actual monthly report and the update on the consolidated election. Mr. Pollock, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have a copy of our report. Start with the financials as usual. We are well ahead of 2022 in terms of revenue. Again, this is revenue that our office generates that goes into the general fund. As we've said before, one of the big drivers is passports. We're over almost double last year at this point in terms of passports. If you look on your report, so far in 2023, for the first 3 months, we're at 1,800 passport applications completed. If you go back to the 10 years or 12 years you have here on your report, those 3 months would beat like 7 of the 12 years for the whole year in terms of passports. So between that and the, what page of that is, I'm looking at my copy, but the revenue that's being generated, and then the people that are coming in because we're a one-stop shop and getting their passport photos taken. Again, it's more revenue that's being generated by the county, which helps not rely on property taxes. And that's one of the things that we look forward to doing to help the county taxpayers. Like I said, that's there. Also, the certified copies, people coming in and getting copies of their birth records. As more people are traveling, besides getting their passports, they need their birth certificates, people getting their real IDs, et cetera. So we're generating more revenue. We're happy to be doing that for the county. Another thing that's going on, earlier this month, the clerk's office certified the tax extension to the treasurer's office. So that means that in this whole process of tax extension from the beginning, from the township assessors through the process to the tax, the tax bills going out, tax bills should be able to go out on time with the treasurer's office because that extension was certified over to the treasurer's office. So we know that all local governments are relying on that revenue. So the clerk's office did its share of that. So we thank everyone that's part of that process, from our township assessors, supervisor of assessments, the treasurer's office, that that process is moved along, and tax bill should be able to go out on time. Most people don't necessarily think about what our office does in terms of tax extension. They think of just elections. So I want to talk about some of the other things that we do. So that's our report for what you have. Any questions on the monthly report?
Mr. Young?
Yeah, I was going through this, and maybe it's because you have money flowing in and out, but I saw that there was a small amount of interest earned on the large amount of money that you have, and I just wanted to know if you're looking into using that money, putting into a fund. I don't know whether the money's going in and out and you zero it out every month or not, but it seems that there's a potential chance of taking this and putting it into a fund to gain a little more interest.
Are you referring to the tax redemption fund?
Yeah, I was looking at, it says yes, the interest on that tax redemption fund. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but I just saw the 1.8 million. I thought maybe you can make more interest on that, but I don't know how the money flows in and out of the office.
I can take that back, but maybe a restricted fund. But you can try to get your answer on that, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the clerk's office report? Okay, we have the update on the consolidated election, Mr. Powell. Madam State's Attorney.
Thank you, Chairman. On April 4th, we held our consolidated election in Kane County. At approximately 8:45 that evening, the unofficial election results posted on the clerk's website appeared to take a significant jump in numbers. The results were then taken offline. Unofficial results were then put online later that evening, and there was a disparity with the numbers that were posted before. Since that date, I have received complaints regarding this issue along with requests to review the matter. As such, since the state's attorney has delegated general authority within the election code to receive and review reports of violations of election laws, I will be conducting a formal inquiry into the matter. Upon completion of the inquiry, I will make a report to this committee that will obviously be open to the public. Thank you.
That is the status of the situation right now. When we have a formal report from the state's attorney's office, we will schedule a special meeting of this committee so we can all come back here and find out what happened, what we're doing about it going forward, and have that conversation at that time, Mr. Chair. And I believe we can also get an update on the U.S. Alliance issue. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Williams speaking. Ms. Jamie, can you tell me roughly the time frame for this report?
Of course, I've already begun the inquiry, so I had a meeting with the clerk's office. Coming soon, we will actually be going through some specifics in regards to the election process itself, meeting with IT. I have assigned one of the investigators within my office, who is a former chief of a police department, to assist in this inquiry. I'm hoping that I can come before the next public service meeting. Chairman Sanchez has indicated that he's also willing to set a special one if we can come back to this before that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Sorry, there's not more to chew on right now, but that's where we're at. Madam Chair, did you have something?
Yes, I just would like to add, I was there at that meeting as was Mr. Sanchez, an additional state's attorney was there as well as representatives of the election board, Jack Cunningham's office. So we had witnesses to that, and I just want to assure you that we will be meeting. The plan was laid out by all parties involved. It'll be made with the utmost integrity. We have due faith in our legal system. So I know that this report will be forthcoming. It'll be honest, and it'll be based on facts, pure facts, not assumptions. That I can guarantee. Isn't that correct, Ms. Moser?
That is correct. And it will come with a significant amount of transparency. Of the complaints that I've received, the people will be receiving an email response from me today and have the ability to come in and talk to both me and my investigator while I'm conducting this inquiry.
Any questions from the committee?
Are we still on the county clerk part of the?
Yeah, we're on the discussion item update on the consolidated election.
Okay. I just want to ask Mr. Pollack, where is Mr. Cunningham? I mean, I know that we requested his presence here.
I'm here representing the clerk's office.
Did Mr. Cunningham, was he notified of this meeting? And because everyone thought he would be here.
He was asked, he was invited.
Okay.
We can't compel elected officials to do anything.
I understand.
Unless it's statutory outlined. So he was invited and suggested he should come.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And Chairman, seeing that there are no other questions, I did just get a call from the school nurse for my child, so I'm going to duck out of here and I apologize for that.
Understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us your update. Okay. That is it for the clerk's office section of this meeting. We'll be moving on to the recorder. Any questions on the recorder's office report this month? Okay, treasurer collector, Mr. Lawson, you are here. Do you have an update for the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I understand brevity is the soul of wit, so I'll be brief. I'm here today in the county collector capacity. Just like to report that our staff and I have submitted our monthly report about 10 days to 2 weeks ago. Our processes are on schedule, thanks to their work. I also appreciate the supervisor of assessments work and county clerk's work. And again, we're on schedule. May 1st, property tax bills go out. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Any questions for the treasurer? All right, thank you, Mr. Lawson. Supervisor of assessments, Mr. Armstrong.
Good morning, everyone. My report begins on page 55 of your packet. I dealt chiefly with the equalization factors that are projected, not final equalization factors for the township assessors. There's a lot of information in there, including, if you're very detail oriented, a publication from the Department of Revenue beginning on page 58, which discusses the process for equalization. Rather than go over that in the interest of the time of this committee, I'd be happy to entertain questions that you have. Or if you have questions beyond that, you can always give me a call or stop in and see me.
I've always found Mr. Armstrong to be very open and forthcoming on any request for information, so please take him up on that offer. Any questions at this time? Okay, we will move on to the Regional Office of Education. Ms. Del Santo.
Morning, everybody. I will be very brief as well. I just wanted to let you all know that our office was nominated for some awards from the National Association of Government Communications, and we've been awarded 2 of them. One of them for our annual report, which we distribute to all of you in the fall, and the other for our weekly Tuesday Tech Tips, which are done by Phil Morris in our office, and they focus on school and general topics. So I just wanted to let you know that we did that.
Sounds good. Haven't seen you for a while, so it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Any questions for the regional office? Juby?
Are you going to mention the Educator of the Year that's upcoming?
Educator of the Year, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, out of the Q Center. You all should have gotten your invitations. I'm very excited by the number of county board members that are going to attend this year. We have 37 nominees from the schools, and it looks to be a wonderful evening.
Excellent. What was that? A gunshot? It's okay. Just got to make sure I don't have to duck or anything.
3 meals that came up with a noise.
Any questions for the Regional Office of Education? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Del Santo. Veterans Assistance Commission, Mr. Zimmerman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For my monthly report, the metrics for our claims velocity still remains, it's trending at a record high there comparative to the 10 years I've been doing this. Same with the total claims pending, the second chart you see in my report. And I'm just going to elaborate on this a little bit because it does pertain to the resolution that we'll have coming up. The applications and forms completed from our office on the second page of my report also are trending at a record high. And to give you an idea, 300 cases we have pending at any given time for the last few months. That means those 300 cases are claims that we filed are pending adjudication before the VA. We received requests from information from the VA to respond to that we have to for those 300 cases. We receive requests from the veterans we represent for those 300 cases for the status of their claims. At the same time, just for this past month, we filed 78 new claims and we received 58 decisions on claims that were pending. So that's a constantly revolving workload there. And those 78 claims take a lot of work to put in. And then the 58 decisions also isn't just the veteran gets the decision and we're done. It's there are benefits that come as a result of the decision in a lot of cases, what we call the ancillary benefits. And there's also veterans who are not happy as well as us with some of those decisions. We have to appeal those. That concludes, well, actually two things. We have a couple of events coming up. Previously in August, I mentioned we did a law enforcement training event for law enforcement officers on how to respond to veterans in crisis. It was very well received. We have another one scheduled this time at the sheriff's office. It was sold out. We have a wait list for it. That's coming up on May 5th. That comes at no cost to those law enforcement agencies. And then next week in Carroll Stream, we're participating in a multi-county veteran benefits seminar where we have over 80 veterans signed up to learn about benefits. That concludes the report that I have today.
Any questions for the Veterans Assistance Commission? No, with the ARPA committee, we are working on a grant proposal for veteran service organizations. So hopefully that will be coming forward this month. Hope to see that happen. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, there are no questions. We have a couple resolutions. Take a motion in a second for the resolution authorizing fiscal year 2023 budget adjustment for hiring one additional veteran service officer for the Veterans Assistance Commission.
Williams moves.
Move Surges.
Williams and Surges.
Tepe second.
Too late, Tepe. You got to be fast,
too late.
man.
Sorry.
We're moving quick today. Any questions on this resolution? Madam Chair.
Just the funding, it's just confirmation, my understanding that this is coming through federal dollars, not from the general fund.
I'll let Mr. Zimmerman answer that.
None of the funding we receive from my office comes from the federal government. It all comes from the county property tax levy. The funding for this particular resolution to fund this position through the end of fiscal year 23 comes out of our reserve fund balance, which we have a sufficient amount of.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Lewis, Surges,
Surges, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Young,
Young, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
passes.
All right, I need a motion in a second for the resolution authorizing the number of procurement cards issued to the Veterans Assistance Commission and each of their transaction limits.
So move Surges.
Surges moves.
Gums will second.
Gums will second. I thought Tepe was going to get in there. This is again housekeeping procurement card authorizations. Any questions on this one? Mr. Surges.
Jake, in this, some of the other departments had highlighted on the chart their cards. How many cards are you asking for?
We only have had one card for the 10 years that I've been here. That card is held by me.
Thank you, sir.
So this is one card in your name,
That is correct.
okay, with what limits?
$5,000 credit limit and a $2,000 single purchase limit.
Thanks. Just wanted that for the record.
Any other questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Lewis, Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe, Williams,
Williams, yes.
Young,
Young, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
passes.
Okay, we have no other business, no need for executive session. Can someone please
Mr.
ask?
Chair,
for unanimous-
Sturgis?
Mr. Sturgis.
And I may have, there was a lot at the front of the agenda, but did we hit item 5A?
Yes, finance. We may have bypassed it, actually. Any questions on the finance reports for this month?
No, we didn't.
Just didn't have it checked off, man.
No, that's usually I do, so good on you.
Mr. Sanchez.
Not my mistake. Mr. Williams.
I have one thing. We heard a lot of good comments here today, a lot of feedback from the public. As a new board member, I came on into this job with the understanding that our role was with respect to elected officials, be it the clerk or the treasurer, the coroner, whomever, is that our oversight is limited to the budget.
Mhm.
All right, we control the purse strings. We can't, because they have internal controls, they control the manner in which they operate their office. Mr. Bauer brought up some good points that I found interesting. I think it'd be helpful if we could have the state's attorney's office prepare a memo to us which details what exactly our responsibilities and oversight abilities are.
Mhm.
So that as we're having these discussions and hearing this feedback from the public, that we know exactly what we can do. Because as I sit here today, I'm not exactly sure that I know what authority we have. And it's unfortunate that Ms. Mosser had to leave, but maybe Mr. Shepro could relay that back to Ms. Mosser. If there's a consensus among this body, I think that would be helpful. And it might actually be better, no disrespect to the state's attorney's office, if we had an outside law firm specializing in municipal county law, prepare that for us in a succinct manner that could be distributed to all of us. So we really know exactly what we can do and should do.
Yeah, that's a point well taken. I agree. I do think there are documents that exist. But I do think a central governance document for board members, for the county, for the people of the county to see, but for us to be able to always refer to, that's in one place. I think we have a need for that. And I would be in favor of that myself. Madam Chair.
Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Sturgis.
Oh, I would assume we have a representative here who's the board's liaison to the state's attorney, Mr. Shepro, who is an expert in that. Perhaps just he could speak briefly about that before a more formal report could be given. Sir, could you comment on that?
I think that's a good suggestion. I think that the state's attorney's office and I would be certainly qualified to prepare a memo. I don't know that we'd have to go to outside counsel to do that. And I think that could be done hopefully by your next meeting. I'll speak with the state's attorney about that.
Okay. That sounds good.
I think it's certainly a very legitimate request. The board does have the right to ask the state's attorney for written opinion on any matters concerning county government.
Okay.
And just if I can just follow up with just a real quick question. Do we have any idea, given that in both comments now from Mr. Williams and Mr. Shepro, when your planned meeting will be, the follow-up meeting from State's Attorney Mosser? Because if that report is going to be given before that meeting or at your next meeting, I think it would be best if we got it before that so that we would have clarity.
We'll have to figure that out, yeah, and see what the timeline
I
would
think
look
Ms.
like.
Mosser's report is going to require probably more work than just a recitation of the law with respect to internal controls and this committee's oversight.
So perhaps we could get it sooner before the board meeting.
Yeah, as far as a memo regarding the issue, I think that's an easy ask. What I was talking about is a little more in depth, but that is very easy to do. So, Mr. Sturgis.
Chairman, thank you. to Mr. Williams' point, since the last meeting, in this process with the election, I've asked two questions. The first one was specific to the grant and who the grant was made out to, how that works and who's in the review process of it. And the second question was very specific and can we compel an elected office to come speak to us? I've received a lot of feedback discussing internal controls and quite honestly, my little thumb drives up to about 117 pages of internal controls, and I don't know that I fully understand it all, other than to say, we don't have a lot of authority as a board to the elected officials other than the budgetary process. I would like to be better informed on that. There's that notion in the legal where back up the truck with files. So you're spending all your time reading. I was kind of looking for more of an executive summary and some guidance on that. My second point is regarding Mr. Shepro. I am very confused as to what Mr. Shepro's role is to the board. I'm very confused on how to reach out to Mr. Shepro. When I tried to email him, I was using his old county board email thinking it was going to Ken, only to find out that that's in fact not the case. And that there was a meeting that was going to happen about how, if the guy's an independent contractor or an employee, could we just please, as a board, be notified as to what that is, how this is supposed to work in order to interface Mr. Shepro, who just has an overwhelming amount of knowledge and all the respect I can possibly muster. But if I can't reach him, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And it was suggested possibly I have to go through a different route, like ask Aaron or ask Jamie. They will get it to Ken. Well, now you're forcing me to ask more questions as to what is his role? What is the authority? What should we be doing? And I'm very uncomfortable. I don't want to impinge my friendship with my colleague, former board member, Mr. Shepro, and put him in a bad situation. If somebody can just give me a guideline as to what it's supposed to be and whom we're supposed to be asking what. And I would very much appreciate that. And I think this is the appropriate venue to ask for that guidance. I would appreciate it along with the internal controls. I don't know when Mr. Williams, I don't know when we have that conversation, but 117 pages to me was a little slightly overwhelming. That's not what I was expecting. I was expecting, again, a summary of what we should and should not expect.
You're referring to the 117 pages of material that was sent by the state's attorney's office?
Oh, I have it. But I just keep,
this is your
I just keep merging files into my PDF to have it all in one place to try and reference to, and then hope that I can search the PDF to find information. So no, I'm not referring to any one document. I just keep compiling them.
With the chairman's permission, well, you do have my phone number. But we
Microphone a little
are
closer.
working through issues.
Yeah, Mike.
Sorry. We're working through some of the issues about the emails and so forth. I have raised your concerns, which I share myself, and I think we did speak briefly about them. There are apparently issues that need to be resolved for something to happen. But I will make my email available to the board office in the interim, and I will assume whatever responsibility for getting those messages. You can also contact me, obviously, through the civil division, but I will respond to.
Ken,
any
reaching
input.
you isn't the problem. The
Yes.
appropriateness of the reach out is what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
So
let's get him an email address.
yeah, I mean,
that's
crying out
short way of
loud.
putting it.
Yes. Let's.
Yeah, I have a contract. I'll share that with you and everybody. It states what my role is. I think it is somewhat of a work in progress. And maybe we'll just leave it at that. But so far, I haven't been told that I can't answer questions or do things. So
Madam Chair.
Just for clarity, I had the same question and I did ask the state's attorney and we had an email conversation. And in the email, I was told that March 14th was the day that it was formalized. That Mr. Shepro became, I'm going to use, I don't know if this is the right term, the board liaison. I don't know if it's the board's attorney, but I think board liaison from my working title would be appropriate. And yes, there is no email. So yes, and that's a challenge.
Let's clean that up. Yeah.
Mr. Roth.
I actually have that letter up. Jamie sent it out. Like Madam Chair said, March 14th at 10:39. In there, it says, if you have any questions, contact Jamie. It says, please do not call or attempt to call him during off hours. At least is what that letter said. So if anyone doesn't have that email, I can forward it on to. It was sent to Madam Chair and all the board members at that day.
you can call me off hours.
Don't say that on the microphone. Get what you asked for. Okay. Anything else before we move to adjourn?
I don't, I forgot to ask it during the county clerk's office, but I know that the US Alliance had provided $650,000 awarded that money in December. Has that money been spent on anything or is that just sitting in an account?
No, it has not. It
Okay.
hasn't. Yeah. And we'll have a more formal update on that.
Okay.
At our next
I
meeting.
forgot to ask that during the clerk's office. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair.
I have a question regarding the interest. Perhaps it could be clarified. I reviewed it. Perhaps that's aggregate till this month, till April. It's $1 million, so I think maybe it's going to be building. But that would make sense to me this because it's $340,000. So it seems to me that's a build.
Okay, thanks. I was looking at the $1.8 million. I was just going.
That'd be a
through quickly,
substantial
and
return
I
on
was
that
thinking,
investment.
yes, you should be able to more than $36. So, okay, thanks.
Anything else before we adjourn? Just need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Williams moves.
Williams moves.
I'll second.
We did that. I believe didn't we get unanimous consent for reports on file? We did.
So I thought
That's what I
Kathy
thought.
asked.
Yeah, and then we kind of skip back. Yeah. Motion by Williams, second by
Young.
Young. All those in favor say aye.